You've probably seen it by now. We've all watched as Elon Musk's electric vehicle company, Tesla, as well as many of their customers and dealerships, face all kinds of domestic terror attacks. And it's all because Elon Musk is leading the crusade to cut government waste, fraud, and abuse. Seriously. Why would anyone be upset with this? But it's happening all across the country from Seattle to New Orleans. We're watching individuals and groups who are targeting Tesla products, targeting dealerships in attacks ranging from destruction of property to actual arson. And Republicans are asking for specific investigations into these attacks, even suggesting an inquiry of a particular Democrat over harmful rhetoric concerning the EV company. So, will these attacks subside anytime soon? Well, here to discuss this and other questions is Congressman Eric Burlison, who serves on the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability, as well as the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. He represents the 7th Congressional District of Missouri. Congressman Burlison, welcome back to Washington Watch.
It's good to be back.
Well, great to see you. All right, we're watching all these criminal attacks, and of course they're being labeled as a form of protest against Elon Musk and Doge and so forth, but this seems to be going beyond just protest. So why are these so-called protests so violent and so destructive?
I think whenever you firebomb vehicles, particularly electric vehicles, when they catch fire, they are almost impossible to put out, and they burn hot and they burn bright. These individuals know what they're doing. They're doing destruction. This is not peaceful protests. This is violence. This is a form of terrorism. It's not acceptable in the United States.
Absolutely. And you have called for investigations into these attacks against Tesla. So I don't know how what method those investigations take forth, but I would imagine maybe the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee would look into this. What are you calling for? What are you looking for?
We're calling for the Attorney General Pam Bondi to use every lever of power and investigative tool that she has to investigate these acts of terrorism. And look, I understand that today or tomorrow there's going to be protests of individuals with signs and all that. That's fine. That's perfectly acceptable. I may not agree with these individuals, but this is America. You have a right to be there without causing violence and destruction. But we should all agree that this level of violence and destruction is not acceptable. We also, we have some disturbing trends where the left is elevating these individuals and glorifying them. The individual who murdered the president of the health insurance company. There's a law that's being put in place in California that has his name on it. It's glorifying him, but he's a murderer. Somebody who committed a violent act. And so this is not something that we should be glorifying. We should not be glorifying the firebombing of these buildings and these cars, any kind of destruction, the keying of vehicles even. We need to be reminded that this is America. You can have your say, you can have your voice, but just do it peacefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Do it peacefully. I think that's such a great point. We're seeing so much rhetoric right now. Some of this rhetoric might even have an influence on the attacks, the protests, the terrorism, whatever you want to call it, that's taking place right now. The rhetoric has to be ratcheted down. In fact, and I'm not trying to put Governor Walz in this camp necessarily, but it is a fact that you called out Minnesota Governor Tim Walz for celebrating the declining stock value of Tesla. And, that's a different type of rhetoric, I guess, but still nonetheless, how does this type of rhetoric contribute, you think, to violent actions that we're seeing around the country?
Yeah, I think a lot of this aggressive nature towards Tesla is completely misplaced. And you understand the difference between a publicly held company and a privately held company. Tesla is mostly vastly owned by shareholders, and most of which are retirees. So when Tesla stock goes down, I don't know why anybody would be celebrating, because what that means is that there's a lot of people whose retirement funds are going down. It's a publicly traded company. Tesla is not the one working with Donald Trump to, on Doge. An individual who owns shares of Tesla, and the fact that the left can't understand the difference is evidence enough. But at the end of the day, I think that if there is activity, to answer your question, if there's nefarious groups, foreign actors, countries like Russia or China, that we can determine are involved in amplifying or inciting some of these violent acts, that's something that we should be concerned about. If it's domestic terrorism that's occurring because it's being funded by some leftist group to try for the purpose of inciting violence and terrorism, then it's something that we should absolutely be investigating.
Absolutely. Less than a minute left to here real quickly, but in a subcommittee last week, you jumped on the CEOs of NPR and PBS. Tell me real quickly, do you think these ought to be defunded right now, or what's your thoughts on this real quickly?
Yeah, it's long past due. I mean, we don't need state-sponsored information anymore. It's readily available everywhere. And particularly what's frustrating is that these entities, PBS, NPR, we all know that they're leftist leaning. But what Jim Jordan uncovered is that of the editorial board, when 87 out of 87 all are registered Democrats, there's not a single Republican voice. Something's wrong. And so we're funding leftist propaganda, and that should stop.
Yeah, that's the kind of information that people need to be aware of. That basically tells you everything about the slant that they're giving us. All right, Congressman Eric Burlison, thank you so much for joining us on Washington Watch. Hope you have a great weekend. Appreciate your leadership.
Thank you. You too.